5th Regional Planning Commission meeting. Roll call. Richard Black.
Here.
Greg Luke.
Here.
Dan Sargent.
Here.
Dan Brown. Alec Mosley.
Here.
Katie Trahan.
Here.
Greg Rollins. Thank you. You have in your hands the minutes, had a chance to review them. Any comments? Or motion to approve?
I'll make such a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right, we'll begin with the old business. This is a discussion that we've had for 2 meetings now that we're continuing. It has to do with the location of campgrounds in C2 and C3 zoning. The discussion at this point has moved to an understanding that it would be either allowed use or on review. Chad, you have comments you care to make on that?
Well, there's no new comments to make, but Mr. Hill was here this evening. He had wanted to address the commission on possibly allowing some campgrounds in a particular zoning district. And what I had provided for you at the previous meeting was a map of the areas that are zoned C3, because that was the original request, was in C3. So I think Mr. Hill had wanted to address you on that this evening.
Right. So Commissioners, if you remember, we have mapped our area here of the city limits, and it identified the C3 zoning with green. Let's move this discussion on. Any comments on the use of C3 and C2 in campgrounds? Commissioners? Anything to say?
Yes. Just questions of concern. As I understand it, campgrounds are allowed in C2 and R3, is that correct?
Yes,
Mr.
Yeah, they are allowed as a use, a permitted use in C2, R4, and they're permitted as a special exception in R3.
Okay, and the map provided has outlined the subject property, as I understand it. Is that the map in green, or is this the area past the convenience center?
Well, the area in green is the C3 areas of your community. The original request was to make that. Mr. Hill has some maps I think he would like to present to you and discuss tonight what he'd like to do. And he had mentioned to me before the meeting possibly rezoning the property if he did not get it done to C3. So do you want to, is it all right if he comes up and speaks to you?
So he's on the agenda later in the discussion. I wanted to get the commissioner's input on this before we talk to Mr. Hill about it. Mr. Black.
Would this be, if we rezoned it, is that a spot zone?
I've not looked at his properties. He only presented me with the map this evening.
So it's allowed presently in C2?
Correct.
And this property is not in C2?
Apparently not. And like I said, he just gave me this map right before your meeting started, so I've not even had the opportunity to look, see what the property is zoned.
I compared the plat you're showing today to the document that you circulated that has, this, I think I can see that this is a, or your map is C3.
And it may be.
And is it, my understanding was the green on this map is C3 over 3 acres, is that right? Because it's what would qualify for campgrounds.
I think it was just highlighted all of the C3 zones.
I think he did too.
Yeah, this is just everything that's C3.
That's
Well,
not-
no, I do
that's
see
not what
some
the
in here that it is not. Yeah, if it's in the green, it notes that it's 3 acres or more.
It's the
Okay.
3 acres or more that puts
In the C3, yeah, that's an alleged here.
I think the tract we're talking about is number 17 on that.
My personal opinion, and I think I said this last week, is that I'm not personally ready to make a zoning change it's important for us to get the citizen input for what everyone wants in our city limits and know what everybody's looking for. And I'm not ready to start making zoning changes like this.
Does it allow to go to the BZA presently?
No,
If it's not?
no, it's not permitted at all in the C3 zone.
Further comments? Victor?
And we, continue to regulate regardless whether it's in city limits or not. If it's C3, it's C3, right?
I don't quite follow what you're saying.
Are we commissioned to, make an opinion toward inside or outside city limits?
Well, this is a zoning issue, so it would only be inside the city limits.
So it would what?
It only pertains to the city limits because it is a zoning issue.
Okay.
You have authority in your urban growth boundary
Right.
plans for subdivisions only.
Right. But is it in city limits?
Yes, yes, sir, it is.
When we last laid this down, I thought we were fairly close to an agreement that we were okay with it staying in C2 as zone, but we couldn't understand why it would be in C2 and not be in C3.
Right.
And that we could remedy that by having a special use vote if it came up that somebody wanted to put this in C3. Does anybody else remember that discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Are we comfortable with that?
So in that case, if we added it, then it would go to the BZA,
I think it would, but
and it'd be on that specific piece of property.
that's the way I understand it would work.
What you're talking about is making it a special exception. It does have to go to the BZA, but any property that met this 3 acre threshold in the C3 would be eligible for somebody to come and make that request before the BZA.
Okay?
And there's,
So we're back, if you approve one, how do we draw the line?
Right.
according to your math there, it's an awful lot of tracks that qualify.
Motion on the table, further discussion.
No, I'd like.
I'm gonna get
What's the motion?
ducks in a row here before we talk to him. I don't know our commissioners do about this.
It's not, well, I'm sorry to be a little ignorant, but I don't understand this map. Is this what I'm calling the famous green map?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
your C3 zone cut some of those maps that are green, or some of those lots that are green. How would that affect?
All of them that are green are
But that's your
C3 of more than 3 acres or more, is that
That's
correct?
what the legend said. This map was done before me, but
But the
that's how they have
C3
it drawn
zone
up here.
is what's bordered in orange. And therefore, that orange line cuts some of those lots.
That's correct. So what you see bound by that orange line, that is the overall C3 zoning district.
Okay, so what do you do as an example for lot 14, which is on the bottom?
So lot 14, I think that must be a split zone property. Let me look at your zoning map.
So how would we deal with that split zone?
Okay, no, what that one is on 14, I was looking at your zoning map, that is the edge of your corporate limit, so that's why it cuts across that part. The part just beyond that is in the county.
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Further discussions, a motion, or do we just move on?
So the motion is for permission, for permitting?
A special use vote for C3 zoning for campgrounds that would then go to the BZA, since it is a zoning change. All right, we're moving right along then.
If you do the special, if you do the BZA, it's the same as doing it,
Right.
because anybody could do the same thing, so,
Right.
I mean, I echo what Katie said. I mean, we're in the process now, I assume they can, I don't know what kind of timeline we're on, but we're in the process now of bringing these urban planners in, right?
So Yes, thank you for hosting them. They'll be here the middle of next month for the first 2 days to do a fact-finding mission, and we can talk about that later. But to answer your question, I do not think a special exception is like, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, is like accepting all of them, because that gives the BZA the authority to, on a case-by-case basis, make that declaration about whether it's appropriate on that site.
And that's correct, it would be taken on a case by case, but
Yeah,
all the
we'll
ones
just be
that.
kicking it down the road, for the next, person. I mean, if we're not ready to make the change, it sounds like to me, the special assessment, we're really making the change, they just gotta go through another step.
Well, but the difference between a special exception and having it in your zoning ordinance is that gives the BZA the discretion to say yes or no based on whatever factors they deem relevant. You know, we lose that if you have something that is zoned for a certain use and they meet all the requirements of that zoning, then it could be argued that you're required to allow that use. But a special exception gives the BZA discretion to say yes or no.
Agreed.
And you're on the BZA, and you were on the same committee that I was on, the BZA, dealing with the signage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all the conversation we had, if we approve one, how do we not approve the next one? Or the next one, because the criteria, if the criteria meets, there's no basis for denying.
There were people that had concern, but you can deny it. It's not like having something as a permitted use.
Okay,
I understand.
one more time, I think it's the planning commission's responsibility to determine if we do this, and then puts the power in the hands of the BCA to authorize it on a per case by case basis.
Well, currently where we are, let me just start from the beginning. I think the reason this ended up on your agenda is Mr. Hill had made a request to have a campground in C3. It's currently not permitted, and what the map he gave me this evening identifies 4 parcels that he said he would like to have a campground on at C3. So that's where it came up. I know at the last meeting it was decided until your comprehensive plan was completed, you wanted to hold off on rezoning. So since that time, Mr. Hill had contacted me and said he was unable to make the last meeting and asked that he come back and speak to you. So I added that back to your agenda so that he can speak with you on that issue. Now, as far as campgrounds go, it is up to you to determine whether or not you want to allow those in C3 or allow them as a special exception or leave it as it is now. What it would take from this point forward, if you did make a change, it is a change to your zoning ordinance. So you'd be approving or making a recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for that amendment, which they have to have 2 readings and a public hearing. If that did go into effect, and you did it as a use on review, it's actually a 2-step process, because there is a site plan that is required for campgrounds that would come before the planning commission, and then it goes to BZA for the determination of whether or not it is an acceptable use for that piece of property. So that's how that would work, if they give me any better insight.
I didn't realize we were talking about 4 tracks, one of which clearly, according to your map, or the map, appears to be less than 3 acres.
Yeah, I mean, now he would have the option, if that was one, to combine those 2 tracks, since he does have the one that is larger. So the parcel 15, 13, I think to what the X on top of it, with the other small lot there, those are truly over the 3 acres, so we could always combine that, one of the lots, if you wanted to do that to me, so it can be used as well.
Further comments, discussion?
I tend to agree with Katie's comments about, making zoning changes while we are hoping to be developing our overall plan.
Can I just make a comment on the timing of that plan, just so you guys are aware? It's you guys' purview to make whatever decision you want. But the idea is that they have a preliminary crew that's gonna be here in the middle of October to meet with you folks and other folks to get an idea of the scope of work. And from there, they're gonna put together a suite of professionals, probably 8 to 10, that's gonna come for what's probably gonna be a week-long session. That week-long session is where all that public comment will happen, and we'll really be getting into the down and dirty of these issues. And that's not liable to happen until after the first of the year. And the final plan is not likely to be in our hands until probably sometime in the spring. And then after that would be hopefully some implementation phase if we like what we're getting. So I just want to make sure that y'all are aware that if you say you're not going to do any zoning between now and then, it's going to be several months still that it's going to happen. Because we're going to hit Christmas, and I don't think we're going to get good public input around the holiday season. So we've all decided collectively, once they're here in October, they're likely to not be back until probably February. And then it's all weather dictating. So just so y'all understand those timelines.
I understand what you're saying. I just really feel like it's not my position here to only vote based on my personal opinion. It's critical that there's more citizen input, and when we've got this in the works, I would rather have a few months on hold and really have that input before we just start making zoning changes, because it seems like we, for the last few years, have been making zoning change after zoning change after zoning change, and somebody comes before us and wants to do something. And I really don't have a problem putting that on hold for 5 months. And that's just the way I feel. I think it's way more important to understand what the citizens of Montego want before just making changes.
I echo, I assume there's a reason it's not in there today. We didn't do it. Somebody else did it, and I assume your question is when it's in 2 and not 3 or vice versa. But I assume that was done for a reason by our forefathers. So.
Further comments? Mr. Hill, we're going to ask you to go ahead now. We've picked you apart here for a few minutes, so please make your presentation to us concerning the city and what you intend to do or want to do.
I'm Randy Hill. I'm half owner in this land out here. There are 4 parcels there that I'd like to combine. I'd like to put in a RV park with full hookups, and it all depends on the lay of the land there. I would probably want to put in some of those tree houses like they do further out the road out there, you know, for weekends. That's what I'm looking at on this land here. We'd have to clear it up to see how it lays. It kind of looks lay down, so it'd be ideal for some of those weekends, you know.
Right.
Many things. And I would like to get started, you know, whenever we could, but I understand putting it off, whatever. I mean, all I've got is time, I guess, you know. But I can go ahead and clear this property, can I?
Yes, if you're not intending to use it for a campground and you're just clearing property, you can do that.
Well, I'm not clearing all the trees. I see it eat up with kudzu out there.
You're right.
There's one big kudzu thing out there.
So where you're talking about is between the 2 interstates across from where our city waste management facility is located, okay?
I'm not sure if you put it on the cover. Can you put it on the cover?
Permit clear. All right.
Have to get a permit.
Clear.
Was there a problem getting one of those on C3?
I'm not gonna answer that.
We're gonna go to get a permit.
All right.
That
Yeah,
way.
that lady.
There might be a problem. No, I'll do that. And, well, so where are we at tonight? Tell me what's happening. We're putting it on hold.
We are.
All zoning is.
We're not gonna take a motion or a vote here. We wanted to get comments, and we did from our commissioners, see where they stand. It appears that the majority of them would like to hold on this for a while.
I just think it'd be great for the city. There'd be a lot of tax dollars there.
Okay.
All right. You got any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business item B. We started a conversation on minimum square footage for residential structures at our last meeting. Mayor brought this up, we had a pretty in-depth conversation about that, and we kicked it to this meeting to continue that discussion. And once again, I'll ask Chad Reese if he has comments, and we'll make introduction on that.
I don't have any new comments to make on this. You do already have minimum square footage for each residential district that you have. It ranges anywhere from 800 square feet all the way down to 600 square feet. And that's in your R1 to R3 district. The R4 district does not prescribe a minimum square footage.
Okay. Commissioners, discussion point.
I was out of town last month, so I didn't attend the meeting. I'm not sure, is there a proposal or is this just a free?
It's just a discussion at this time.
Conversation.
There was some concern about minimum square footage being too small in the 600 to 800 foot range, but that was about it.
If I understand correctly, what we would do was make a recommendation to the council. That's all we decided to do.
Since I'm on the, listed on the agenda as bringing this up, I only bring it up because I was asked to mention it, to bring it up, that, with the idea of staying away from tiny homes and going less. If we're satisfied with 600 square feet or 800 square feet, that's fine. I'm only passing on the information because there was concern as how big is big and how small is small. The other part of it is, what does a single lot owner want to do compared to a developer? And that's why that was brought up also for discussion. And that's my only point. I'm the messenger. I'm passing it on for consideration.
Further discussions? Go ahead.
When the council, adopted the 800 square foot minimum for R1, was there some understanding that that's what it took to preclude tiny homes, or 600 feet of preclude tiny houses? I don't know what the, size of a tiny house is.
It can mean different things. In the International Building Code, they actually define tiny homes as being less than 400 square feet. And depending on what version of the code you're on, I think it was the 2018 code possibly that had a very minimum of 120 square feet, and that's based on certain room sizes that you have to have. You have to have a minimum of a certain ceiling height and a certain room size, and I think in the later code that got taken out. But that's how they define it, as less than 400 square feet.
In previous discussions on the highway, we kicked that up to 800 square feet because we did not want tiny home community right in the middle of our central business district. That's where I think the 800 originated from. We still have 600 on the books for other zoning, though, you said.
In R2 and R3.
But what do? We make it all standard at 800? Recommend that, or do we leave it alone?
I personally think R1 is too low at 800.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, I personally think that R1 is too low at 800.
Okay. Alec, you have a comment on that?
I'm, like I said, in this last month's conversation, I was wondering, why is there no minimum in R4? Do you know?
I don't know the background on that.
I don't think there's an R4.
We don't.
I don't think we have one.
You don't have it on your map, but you have it in your zoning ordinance.
Yes.
Where you could create an R4.
Okay.
Kate?
Well, I initially, felt like 800 is too small. And then after listening to everyone last month, I think it really depends on, is it an individual lot and their home, or is it like a developer coming in? And it made me really think about a subdivision, and maybe we need to really dig in and read the subdivision regulations and all of that. I started reading it to a certain degree, and there was I need to spend a lot more time on it, but there was something else in there, Chad, you might know, called something else, but where you can group things in different ways. And I thought that that might be a more, if we could have some more flexibility, either in, depending on who's coming in or how big the subdivision is or what it is, where there could be land, I don't know, where it's not gonna be just specific homes of a certain size and certain lot sizes that could, you know, you could have more parks or different things and different square footages. Not that we need to be dictating what the developers are doing specifically, but if they're coming in and saying, we're gonna do, you know, 90 homes in this thing, that we can have some way to work with them on what it's gonna be within our regulations, to make it work with the character of our community versus having it kind of be a big light on a hillside and come into a neighborhood where it's gonna cause a lot of congestion.
Commissioner Sargent, comments?
I think the 800, if we just made that a standard, I mean, I'm living in 1,000 square foot for 40 years, I think sometimes I wished I had 800.
Mayor Malou?
I don't have a problem with 800 square feet as a minimum.
One of the issues that came up in the previous meeting that struck home with me was affordable housing. And the fact that housing can be up to $200 a square foot now. And square footage drives the price up. And is it our responsibility to step in and tell people that they have to have a bigger house and pay more money for it? Or should we set a limit, like 800, that would be comfortable for everybody? Okay? Any further comments?
I have
Yes.
a motion. I move that the commission recommend an amendment of the zoning ordinance to establish an 800 square foot minimum size for homes in all residential districts.
Thank you, Commissioner Mosley. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Discussion on our planning commission meeting dates. I have reached out to the majority of you, and you got back to me that you thought Monday at 5 o'clock was fine with y'all. Do we have any further input on that, or can we get a motion to submit to the council to change that?
You were talking about the second Monday, I think, when you asked me.
That's correct. Do we want to keep it the second Monday?
The first Monday is a problem for me, so when I responded
That was my fault. It is the second Monday at 5 o'clock. Chad, comments?
I sent an email out to everybody asking if you might consider for the time being leaving on the first Tuesday. We are limited in staff currently. There are 4 of us covering 28 communities, so that makes it a little bit problematic with how we have to juggle our planning commission meetings. And in doing so, I know there was concern with the waiting period between the time something is done here and before it goes to the commission. But your board of mayor and alderman has also established a workshop 1 week prior to their meeting. So if you do go to another week, it'll only make it 1 week quicker to get to that meeting. So we're gonna talk about it in this amount of time to move that business forward.
So is your request for this Monday, did you say?
So if we could just.
Monday of the second week?
Well, what my request would be is that at the current time, you keep it at the current date, which is the first Tuesday of every month. That seems to work well with our schedule.
And this is a temporary request until staffing issues are addressed?
Yes, sir.
I have no problem with that.
First Tuesday of the month at 5 o'clock.
That's correct.
Can we get a motion on that, please?
I'll make such a motion.
Second?
second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. So we'll put that in place for 90 days and see what happens. All right, Chad?
Thank you.
Old business, any old business that anybody wants to present to the commission?
No, that's it.
Hmm?
That's it.
New business. Mr. Lay, College Street right-of-way curious on what you had heard about this.
So this request came up in the last planning commission meeting, and they had asked us to look into abandoning the College Street right of way. There are 3 property owners, in this vicinity that have talked about redoing their property so that they all have frontage on Main Street. So we have done some research in the meantime, I did put an ordinance in your packet. The mayor will be able to address the utilities tonight. There was a concern, there are utilities, the city-owned utilities, not just serving those lots that cross through there, so a utility easement would have to be maintained. Excuse me. From the research though, I was unable to identify an actual right-of-way width, so Mr. Flay, I don't know if you have anything in any of your paperwork that specifies a width for College Street, but the tax maps don't show anything, and I pulled deeds for all the adjoining properties, and while they reference College Street, nothing actually gives me a right-of-way width to say it's from this point to this point, we're abandoning anything specific. So the way I tailored your ordinance for this, let me get down to it on this page, and I'll go over that with you. So the way I tailored it is I said that from the research of the deeds for the adjoining property, it didn't result in finding any definitive boundaries for the College Street right-of-way. And the current tax maps did not define or show a right-of-way that is separate from the adjoining properties. Therefore, the boundaries, width, and length of the right-of-way are unknown. This ordinance does hereby abandon any and all undocumented right-of-way area for College Street, which is bound by the above-mentioned properties, and I have them all listed out there by tax map, and any area on these properties where the right-of-way may have once crossed. Now, as far as the utilities, I do understand there are both water and sewer. Mayor has checked into that. I don't know the appropriate size to maintain, so I don't know how close those utilities are together, where they fall in this property. So I had originally written it to say that the utility easement would be no less than 20 feet, which would be 10 feet on the center of each utility in either direction. And so I don't know if that needs to be increased or if that's sufficient for what's there, because I don't know where those utilities lie.
There is a 6-inch water line that is definitely under probably what I would call center College Street, or the center of College Street. Upon further investigation, we're not sure if the sewer line, goes under College Street or makes a turn before or after. And that'll be researched further.
Mr. Moses.
Question, does the owner of the property to the west of Gilbraith or the Hardin family have anything at stake in the abandonment of the public right of way, which, I don't know, you can't see what it looks like, I don't know this, but it potentially reaches their property?
So what we did is we went with the actual surface that is there now to define as College Street. If it does need to go further, we can extend that line out, which would cross on the Gilreath property and the Hardin property if there's any part of College Street that seems to be across those lots. Just to let you know, does College Street continue on top of the Hardin property, or does it stop at the Hardin property?
College Street went all the way through where the liquor store is, the motel, and connected on to Wren's Nest Road. The city just abandoned a section to accommodate those businesses. And I can find no record of it anywhere being officially done, it was just done. And so, the road, to answer your question directly, the road dead ends at my property line and the Hardin Family Partnership property line. It's where the surface dead ends, right at the property line, so Hardin Family has access to the College Street portion. Now, that tract that's up there by the liquor store, that's part of the same tract that goes down, that 40-acre tract or whatever it is that goes down where they want to do the development. That's not a single parcel sitting alone. It is a part of the big parcel. As far as the road widths, the property lines on the north side of College Street, mine and the one I share with the Hardin family, they're off the road maybe 5 or 6 feet. But the original, what everybody has gone by is on College Street, is on the state route over there. You've got State Road, their right of way comes to the edge of the pavement. Then you had the railroad property. When the railroad came through town, they had 100 feet right of way where it was possible. 50 feet center, north and south of the railroad. And in certain places, they didn't have that, like in the middle of town. But originally, Monteagle was 2 lanes, and then it encroached, I believe, on the south side of the railroad property. But I'm not the one technically that asked for this to be abandoned. There's a gentleman with Century 21, Mr. Long, came up and talked to the mayor and them, and the railroad property parcel between College Street and Main Street is only probably 50 feet wide, average. And there's no use that property owner can do as far as a building or anything. And so he proposed for myself to give some land between me and the Hartons there and swap with the lady that owns the railroad property to create 3 commercial lots to develop for business purposes. It does very little, if anything, to help me. I've got access. And if I had that other 50 feet plus College Street, would it help me? Probably. I guess maybe a little. But the people that it will help the most is the lady that owns a 50-foot strip by 500 feet long, because she can't do anything with it. The Harton family, that parcel there, on the back side of it, on the north side that's fronting there, it's a big slope down. They can't access reasonably or economically their parcel there. So they're not legally landlocked, but they are, for commercial development, they're landlocked. And so it would make another parcel of land available for commercial development if this deal went through. So I told them I would go along with it and agree to it, because I'm going to give up some land, but then I'm not gaining anything. My net gain, I have 2 acres, just right around 2 acres, and I'm not gaining any square footage out of it. I'm doing a land swap. So it's going to benefit the lady that owns the railroad property and the Hartons and the town of Monteagle, and I'm on the bottom of the list probably of who's going to benefit. And as far as easements, the railroad easements, if you read those call for all easements known and unknown. And then what's on the city street and stuff would simply, if this went through, would simply, the city would reserve utility easements and designate them, and I would probably put in the clause known and unknown, because sometimes you don't know the exact location of that easement. And I don't see what the negative side of that is of doing this. And if you file, if the city's going to be maintaining one less city street, and all this was conditional on TDOT approving curb cut on the state road.
Mr. Lane, Chad, would you make comment on that? I know you have some more information on
Sure.
that.
I did reach out to TDOT. I reached out to both traffic engineering and the project development office, since you do have the new, I guess, peanut-shaped roundabout and road widening in that area. And they did reply back to me. I put that in your agenda packet. The question I had asked them, I had given them 2 samples of the layout of the property, what it is now, and what was being proposed to them. And I asked them the question, I said, how will this affect the project for the widening, as well as would they be willing to grant new access points on Main Street? And I know with their driveway connection manual, they have certain limitations on where driveways can be located, especially if they're in proximity to Highway 41. So the reply that I did get back on this, I'll read the important part of it. It says the project also includes constructing a portion of the Mountain Goat Trail along the north side of State Route 15 across the frontage of College Street. For the safety of the trail users and to reduce conflict points, TDOT would prefer to minimize the number of driveways and also locate service points on side streets where possible. If all owners were agreeable, a joint access request could be considered, and locating it furthest west away from the US 41 intersection may be preferable in general terms. If properties were modified through a plat to each include frontage, TDOT would work with each property owner through the highway entrance permit request to provide reasonable access if possible, whether before, during, or after the interchange project.
Which would create a frontage road?
Well, they said they would prefer to have joint access if the owners would be willing to share one access point on the property, but if it did get subdivided into 3 parcels, they said they wouldn't make a consideration. It's just where those are located, the ones closest to 41, they want to push a little bit further away.
I take that as positive, Mr. Lane. I think they're basically giving you that permission.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't need anybody standing in the way.
right, and I had proposed earlier to the Harton family that there just be one, connection down next to the where the liquor store driveway is, that big sign, billboard is there, that basically College Street, at the time I wasn't saying abandon College Street, I was saying make College Street cut back in there, and then that would access the Harton lot, and then that would make College Street a through street instead of a dead end with no turnaround, no anything. I mean, that street, it should not have been done that way. There's no cul-de-sac, there's no way for a fire engine or emergency vehicles to turn or anyone. And as far as, you know, what's the negatives?
We don't see one at the moment.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Chad, do we have a formal application in writing to do something?
Not for right-of-way abandonments, I don't believe you do.
Okay, and who is the applicant whose application we're talking about?
But it would be the 3 property owners who join this.
Mr. Lay said he was not an applicant.
I did not initiate it, and technically I'm not the applicant. I would be one of the 3, and I said I would not be opposed to it.
There's been no formal application.
No,
the history of this-
none of them have received it last month's meeting.
If I may,
One more question.
well,
Sure,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, just let me answer the question there. It was brought to me by a realtor presenting this as a possibility to be presented. He didn't say who was in charge, who was the owner. He had surveyed the 3, and the 3 seemed to be interested in bringing their land over College Street, so to speak. I said, well, if there are utilities there, obviously you cannot build on that. And that was the extent of the conversation, and we're here tonight.
You cannot build on the utility either.
Exactly.
My second question, what authority does the planning commission have over abandonment of public streets?
So the planning commission will.
And where does it derive from?
Well, it's in the law that it gives the planning commission the authority to make a recommendation on opening and closing any street in the community. So this is a recommendation from the planning commission that you'll have to do an investigation, which is what we've tried to do so far to see if it's even feasible to abandon the street. In some cases, when you have landlocked pieces of property, that's where we would say that they wouldn't be advisable to do so because they would lose their access. And this, all of these parcels have access with the exception of one of Mr. Lay's property, but if they reconfigure in the manner that he has been talking about doing, they would all have road frontage there. So the way the process works is the planning commission makes a recommendation to the board of mayor and aldermen. So at this level is where we do the investigations on the utilities, the connection to the state highway, look at the adjoining properties and determine if there's any negatives for closing College Street. If we don't find any negatives and it seems like it's a feasible option, then it would be presented from here as a recommendation to the board of mayor and aldermen. To abandon the street, it's done through ordinance, so that just like any other ordinance, you have 2 readings and a public hearing that would be conducted, and it would actually be the board of mayor and aldermen that makes the final determination, because only they have the authority to accept and dispense of streets.
So Chad prepared an ordinance in your packet, as a guideline, what we're trying to do, and I think, as he just stated, we're looking at what we need to do in the front end and due diligence before we put that ordinance in front of the council. One of the main things was utilities, the other was T-Dot. Now, do we have any other hurdles that we need to jump through before we can have open discussion and vote on that, do you think?
I think we still need, from what the mayor has said, to actually try to do a little bit better job determining where those utilities are.
Correct.
And to determine what the appropriate right-of-way, easement width would be that we need to maintain on the property for those utilities. And that's something that still needs to be done. Like I said, the ordinance in your package is just a draft to get us started. That covers all of those basics. We just don't have final information on utilities. We did get what we needed to know from TDOT as far as the driveway connection point.
Right.
So I was afraid they might tell us that they would prefer that street not be abandoned, but that wasn't the case.
So really, the hurdle we have left is still to certify where these utilities are, their size, and locate that easement so that they can put their design off of the easement when it comes
asking about at the very beginning. The way we drew it out on your map, since we can't find a defined right-of-way width for College Street, and none of the deeds reference it, we had stopped where it shows the pavement ending at the Harton property, but if College Street did continue on past that, we should probably update that map to continue on across their parcel as well, so that won't affect anything they're doing with the re-subdivision of that land.
All right, so there will be no motion or vote on this. It's still a discussion on due diligence, and we still have the utility location, size, and easements to get before we can move forward. Further discussion, commissioners? Any further discussion? Public comments?
So you guys should know that the easement that Dean's referring to that says all utilities known and unknown also requires the town at its expense to move any utility that is in the way of commercial development and gives the town 30 days to do that from time of notification of the landowner. So if you guys are considering making this recommendation, you should caveat it that the owner should abandon and release the town from that obligation. It's a very strange easement, and we should be being released from it as we can throughout town.
Comments on that?
Well, we know there's water, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
6-inch water line.
6-inch water line. But we don't know there's sewage.
That still has to be researched.
Is the building that Dean occupies got sewage?
Yes. Just for full disclosure, I was the previous owner, or one of the previous owners before being laid had purchased the property. Just so everyone knows.
There is water, sewer, and natural gas within that area of the road. Now I have countered that the guy that met with Mr. Maloof, I have countered to them that if it was problematic with the city doing that, I made them an offer, the lady an offer on what I call the railroad property, which would be it would be from the south side of College Street to the north side of the state highway.
Gotcha.
And I've made them a counter offer on that in case, this was problematic to the city. And then, I can, and I wouldn't care whether it was abandoned or not, but,
Okay, so we need to leave this on the agenda for the next meeting. Mr. Mayor, are you gonna take the responsibility of getting that utility information together to
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Okay.
Real quickly, sorry, wouldn't it make sense also to have the actual applicant file an application or be present at the meeting or something? Like, we just
Yes.
stick with forms. I think that's one of the
There'll
items.
be a significant site plan review on the project that
It
size.
should be the benefited landowners, because
Right, I mean, something formal needs to be presented so that the further discussion can go on.
Before there's a site plan, we're talking about approving an application which appears to have been dropping off a drawing in City Hall. There is no written application, the applicant's not named.
It's a
I
due
personally-
diligence on moving
I
forward.
personally prefer that we not vote on an informal, idea that is just sort of dropped off at City Hall without anybody submitting a written application and identifying him or herself as an
I
applicant.
totally agree with you.
And showing up to speak for it.
This is due diligence to see if the project itself has a life to move forward. There's not gonna be any vote on this from us until there's a thorough site plan review submitted by the owner and a presentation. We comfortable with that?
Well, is a site plan necessary to get, street abandoned?
No, I think what sounds like the most comfortable for everybody, since we have not heard from the other two property owners involved, if they could either attend the meeting or submit a written letter that signs saying that they would like to make the request to have College Street abandoned.
Or both?
Correct.
how would you expect us to do a site plan on 3 different parcels? Actually, my property is 3 parcels. I'm just on a record of each parcel. And then you've got, a lady in Alabama that owns the railroad property and Hardin Family Park. When you say a site plan, you're talking about a survey done by,
They don't need that.
okay,
They don't
so
need a
tax
site.
map, layout, or whatever, what are you saying?
You need to legally bind these properties together before you can go to that step.
Right, and if they're not gonna abandon the street, why would we do that?
Agreed, I think that's why this due diligence is taking place, so that you can move forward to the next step.
Well, and to clear it all up, I think Mr. Malou can tell you, the real guy came to see me, and I said, you need to go see the aisle and see the mayor.
Yes.
And I said, because he says he has two interested parties on, the Hardin family plot, the commercial, and then the new lot we're gonna create next to it. And then I would be, the last one, and I said, I'm not worried about development, I don't care. And I said, I'd really hold on to that. But is that not basically, Mr. Mayor, how that came about? So it was just an inquiry to fill out the city.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly right.
Any further discussions? Shall we move on? All right, let's move on. Discussion of subdivision and zoning regulations, changes and updates, Ms. Trahan. You want to introduce us to that?
Yes. Find that. Okay, this is two different issues that I have come across, that as the secretary, I've had to, I've run into. So for if two lots are being joined, then it's just removing a lot line, basically. And that's done under minor subdivision B, simple land split. And, to me, that does not fall, it doesn't make any sense. And that, so it says, for divisions of land into no more than two lots, which do not require the construction or installation of new streets, utilities, or other improvements, approval may be endorsed in writing on the plat by the Secretary of the Planning Commission. Without the approval of the Planning Commission, provided that upon review and certification by the planning staff of the Planning Commission that the subdivision complies with the subdivision regulations. Plat should be submitted to Town Hall or the staff planner for review. The minor subdivision B simple land split certificate will be endorsed by town staff to ensure that the plat has been reviewed by the staff planner. So I'm fine that the staff planner is approving it, but it's not a split. And so I've looked into that. Chad and I have gone back and forth a little bit, and I've looked at the definition in the Tennessee Annotated Code, and when I go into that, it says subdivision means in all counties except those in subdivision 4A, the division of a tract or parcel of land into two or more lots, sites, or other divisions requiring new street or utility construction, or in any division of less than 5 acres for the purpose, whether immediate or future, of sale or building development, and includes re-subdivision, and when appropriate to the context, relates to the process of re-subdividing or to the land or area subdivided. So I would like to figure out some other place than minor subdivision B for when we're or get a good explanation of why this is the right place.
So this is basically somebody owns 2 lots and they wanna make one out of it,
Mhm.
so they can build in the middle of it.
Right.
So they erase the property line in the middle.
Mhm.
And all they need is your signature.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, like down here on my property there, that's 3 parcels and on the tax map and deed. And if I were to sell that to someone wanting to build a motel on it, I'm sure they would want to combine those 3 parcels into one. And it would have no detrimental effect, that I can see that you guys ought to have any say-so on. Why should you be able to tell me I can't combine my tracts?
I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to. I'm just saying.
Well, why should I have to come before the planning commission? I mean, what are you gonna look at and say, no, you can't do that? If the staff planner says it meets the planning criteria, you're trying to take his job and say, no, it doesn't meet it.
I think the point here is that what you're talking about doing is not a subdivision. When you combine 3 lots, you are not dividing. You're not dividing,
It's in the wrong section.
and therefore,
Still not trying to change.
therefore, the planner ought to have the power to approve what you wanna do without bringing it to the planning commission, but without pretending it's a subdivision. I think that's a.
Yes, it would not be a subdivision, and I thought the minor subdivision, thing was if I wanted to take where I live, I've got a 16-acre tract out there, and if I wanted to take, an acre out of that, that's on the road, and it's got utilities, and it meets all the things, then I could do that under the minor subdivision and give that to my child, and deed that to my child, for whatever reason, or to a stranger for that matter. But again, the planner would have to look at it and say, yes, it meets the criteria. It's got the square footage, it's got the utilities, it has the road access, it meets the subdivision regulations of a lot. And again, why would you guys have to look at that? When if you do, you're just doing his job.
I don't think we're asking to look at it in any
I'm not
form or
saying
fashion.
we want to.
I think what Katie's concerned about is she's being used as a check to make that he has reviewed the plan, and you don't see why you should have to sign off on it. Why Chad couldn't just sign off on it and it goes straight to the office.
I think the original concern was the wording of the certificates. I remember when it came up before, Ms. Freeman had expressed some concern about the way the certificate was worded.
Yeah.
And most of the communities we work for, they don't have separate certificates. They have a minor subdivision deed certificate if they do a staff approval process,
Right.
and the planning commission certificate. And up until last year, state law always required that for any plat to be recorded, it has to be endorsed by the secretary of the planning commission. But there was always this provision that existed in state law that was not mandatory, that gave planning commissions the opportunity to expedite the process for minor subdivisions. What the law originally said is if it was 2 or less lots, and it involved no new infrastructure and had road frontage essentially, you didn't have to do a private easement or private road to it, then rather than waiting for a planning commission meeting, you could just have staff planner review that, and that's why the certificate exists, to show that it has been reviewed outside of the planning commission. And then for it to be legally recorded, it required endorsement of the planning commission secretary, otherwise you can't legally record it. What changed last year is they have now increased that number, which you don't have to go by that, but they have increased the number to 5. So if you decided you wanted to do what you've always done, 2 to 5, you could do that, or you could do 3 or 4. Some communities have decided on different numbers, some have stayed with 2. So currently your rules still hold at 2. And so that's what all this is. I mean, it doesn't preclude anybody from combining lots, and in most cases, we're never gonna say you can't combine lots. The issue is when you subdivide out lots, to make sure you have the proper utilities, because you're creating a new sellable lot. If you're taking a sellable lot away and combining it into one, you'll hardly ever have an issue of being declined for that. So that's not the issue. Like I said, I think it's the wording of the certificate that was causing concern.
And then the certificate says, all the requirements of approval having been filled pursuant to the subdivision regulations of Monteagle, Tennessee. This final plat was given final approval by the Monteagle Regional Planning Commission. So it sounds like it did come before the commission, and then I'm signing that, and it didn't come before the commission. It should make it sound like it got staff approval.
So it's contradictory,
Yes,
so.
and I don't like.
Not when you designate somebody to have the authority to act on your behalf.
Yeah,
Well-
but being the signature on the application, on the certificate, it says that it's been approved by the city council. I mean,
They're doing it all over the state of Tennessee.
I understand that it shouldn't come in front of the commission. If you're erasing a property line, it shouldn't come in front of the commission.
But the
According to
signature,
Chad, the law's clear on it, and every other community has done it.
The question, I don't think the question is whether property owners can get a minor subdivision or a combination, assuming there's some authority for that. It's the question is whether the secretary should be expected to sign a certificate that this came before the planning commission, when everybody knows it didn't come before the planning commission. We're not saying,
The verbiage thing that he's
we're not
talking
saying it
about.
should come before the planning commission, but to ask her to certify that it did is putting her in a.
I don't mind signing it if the signature block gets changed, so it doesn't sound like it came
Well,
before the
Just the
commission.
most simple thing to do is change the verbiage on that.
That's right,
We
that's
just, we
what,
need to clean up.
That's what she's
that's
getting
what
at.
I'm saying. I just have to let,
And do we
lay
make,
out
we make a
what the
recommendation to
problems
the
are.
council, how do we do that?
Well, this is for the subdivision regulations, so you have sole authority over the subdivision regulations. That does not go to the board of mayor and alderman if you make a change. You do have to have a public notice of a specified time period and adopted by resolution to make that change. And what I was saying at the beginning, most planning commissions use the same basic two certificates, whether it's come before the planning commission or not. But as I stated in the review that I emailed to you, there's nothing precludes you from coming up with an additional certificate if that's what everybody's comfortable with. But what it would still say is that the secretary signed on behalf of the planning commission for a staff approved plat.
For her
And then-
authority.
Correct. And then you still have a minor subdivision certificate, because what we do is we will send a review to the town, and most communities, if they have a building inspector, it's the building inspector that will look at it and sign off, and they're just looking to make sure that the plat that they have before them has all the corrected versions that have been recommended, that means it meets their minimum requirements for the ordinances. And that's just kind of like an extra check here. We don't have the authority to sign on behalf of the town, we're not your employee, but somebody from the town will sign it. So like I say, when I send the review out to the surveyor, I will copy whomever you tell me to designate here that will sign that certificate, as well as Ms. Strahan, so that when you do have a corrected final plat, you can look and see that all those items have been addressed before you issue those two final signatures.
All that being said, so we're gonna draw up some language that we can look at and change
If
it.
that's what you choose to do, that's
So,
all.
Ms. Craig, your concern is that it's stating that you, representing the planning commission, and the planning commission never saw these documents. The language needs to say that you have been advised by
that it was staff approved, that,
staff approval,
right,
and you'd be comfortable with it.
yes.
Is that all right, Chad?
Let's do it.
I mean, it's perfectly acceptable. Do you want me to bring back a sample certificate next time for you to review?
If you would, please.
And is the only certificate you want to be changed, the planning commission certificate, or is the issue of the minor subdivision certificate language?
Probably the minor
I would say
subdivision.
the minor subdivision. All right. Any further discussion? Public input on this? Shall we move on? Thank you.
Thank you.
New business. Anybody got any new business? You got any plans, Chad?
No, sir. We did receive two site plans that I did send out with the agenda
Correct.
packet. On those, I'm not sure either one is going to be ready to be moved forward, because I had gotten some additional information since I received those. Developer was wanting to go forward, the engineer said they weren't ready. So I'm still gotta find out some more information on that, but one was for a townhouse development, and the other I have rejected, that was for an RV park, because it was missing so much information, it didn't even know the address.
I have an opinion that RV park is not within the city limits.
It's not, it is in your city limits, it is on R3, just submitted to you the inquiries that I've gotten by phone. There is somebody who's purchasing a large tract or looking to on Laurel Lake Drive. They had inquired about subdividing into 5+ acre tracts, so they wouldn't come before the planning commission. So I discussed with them about the requirement for road frontage that would be required on that property, and so they were just looking to do the next, but no, that's not the town.
Any further business, public comment? Go right ahead.
One of the things that was brought up to the previous administration and this administration that I'd like to go on the record is somebody to give me a clarification or delve into it and see if you guys can, come up with some type of solution. But it was our contention over a year ago that 1207C was never properly removed from the zoning ordinance. Our attorneys advised us that for it to be removed, there should have been a public hearing, and there was no public hearing. Twice it was brought up in the mayor and board of aldermen, and it was voted on. And we'll concede that, but there was never a public hearing there. A lot of the things you guys are talking about, the 5 criteria for allowing what's built inside the city limits, could cover some of that and give you guys some teeth into what you're trying to, accomplish or not want accomplished. And the city attorney said in one of the meetings right here in this room that he was not aware of that and he would check into it, and we've still not gotten an answer whether or not it was properly removed from the zoning ordinance.
1207C.
1207C, the 5 criteria for building that has been taken out. It's been on the website and off the website and on the website and off the website, but if anybody can prove to me there was a zoning hearing, a public hearing, notifying us and giving us some input on it, then fine, it's removed. But there was not one, and it should be placed back into the zoning ordinance.
That would have been council business, not planning commission business, right?
Right, and it gives you the ability to look at it and see. The second thing is that I would like to see if you guys would possibly have a discussion of not allowing overnight parking in businesses that are closed. 24-hour parking within the city limits. I go to work at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. There are people roaming the streets. The noise has gotten terrible. It's noise that I used to not ever hear. It's loud. I've had guests spend the night at my home that said it woke them up at night because the windows were vibrating. And I don't understand why it would be a problem to say, if you're not open for business and you shouldn't allow 15 trailer trucks to park in your property. I can barely get on the interstate. That's not the Santa Monica. That's going to be the state because the THP's not doing their job in enforcing it. But there's mornings you can't even see the entrance ramp because so many are parked all the way down in and out of the rest areas. And our entrance ramps here on both ends of town. But there are trucks, we've had them parked in the ditches over here at the subdivision. We left tracks all through the mud, where they pulled off on the side of the road. There are places for them to park, and if they don't want to pay for it, that's not our problem. And I've been told by many of them, that's the reason why they park where they park, because they don't want to have to pay to park. I didn't make those rules, but I don't think we should accommodate having everybody park anywhere in town. And I don't think it'd be that much to ask to say, if you're not open for business, then you don't have overnight parking. City needs revenue, police can write tickets. That can be a hefty ticket. Ask them to move. If they don't want to move, then write them a ticket for it. But I don't think it's too much to ask, and it's causing a problem, and it has been causing a problem for some time now.
Thank you. I don't know how successful we'll be going back in the past, finding anything that will look. Okay. Further comments, input from the public?
The 7 spot RV park you were talking about, where is that at? That you just mentioned?
I don't know. I was mistaken. The address that I saw was 7 lots.
Let me give you the appropriate address.
And there is no address on the information submitted.
Not approved, it's on Wells Road, no shop ring.
It's on US 41.
Is it? Where on 41?
It's the old Hickory Creek cabins.
Oh, yeah, that guy came in.
Yeah.
It's around across from the Armory, isn't it?
I think it just, when Anya left, it fell through the cracks because we got the preliminary approval from the BZA, and I think Anya left right after that, and they just didn't know they needed to come back.
He was gonna do a back rental and a campground and a small.
Within the city limits.
You say it's across from the Armory?
And down the road just a little bit.
Right past the fair deal.
But Chad said the information submitted was very limited, poor quality, and they would have to come back with more.
site plan requirements and those for a campground. And like I said, it was so primitive, it didn't even give the address of the property. I had to contact them and ask. But it's 11830 Highway 41, and they have a 12-acre piece of land, and like they said, where it's located, the part they're looking at doing it on is would be the far, but be the closer side of Tracy City is what they're looking at doing.
All right.
Where does the city limit end on Trussell Road? Because there's a piece of property that's to the right of Monica Dunn.
You can take a look at that map right there, because I can't answer that. You know, it'll show.
It's parcel 26.01 is the property I'm referring to.
Is it Ingram Road?
Trussell Road.
It's on Trussell right here, Trussell, to the right of the sanitation facility.
That's out of city limits, I was down and dropped a pin.
Is it out of city
Try to
limits?
pinpoint that location, I know where you're
Out
talking.
of the city limits?
Yeah.
I don't, okay.
What's right on the line? Is it Duncan City?
Yeah.
It's right on the line.
Yeah, it's right on the line, 'cause they plan on putting a campground there.
It's kind of on the
That's
line.
very close to the one. Further discussions, comments, anybody? Motion to adjourn, anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Second.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Adjourn. Thank you all.